So welcome to everyone. We want to thank you again for signing up and for joining us here for our very timely webinar. This is really about special needs planning in a crisis, the steps that you and your family have to take to make sure that your loved one with special needs is very well covered long into the future. And I want to first thank the PACE, the Pacific Autism Center for Education team, for helping to get the word out and for giving us this opportunity to connect with the community. As we get started, let's think about what is going through our heads right now. What are the worries? What are the questions? What are the areas of confusion that we all have right now? Who's going to take care of my child financially in the future? Who's going to take care of her legally? Where will he live after I'm gone? Who will pay for her therapy? Do you just feel overwhelmed? You have your own issues to deal with as well as we go through this crisis. And needless to say, we live in unprecedented times. It's been absolute madness the last month. Can you think back 2 months ago to what was on your mind, the things you were worried about, the day-to-day stuff, and you're probably stressed about plenty about a month or two ago, and just imagine how much our lives have changed. And I think the current coronavirus crisis brings to the surface a lot of stuff that we kind of put out of our heads. You know, fears about our own health, fears about our parents' health, fears about our future that we kind of could put off. And I think now it's very visceral and it's very immediate. And something we hear, go ahead.
Yeah, well said, Mark. So when we think about this topic, there's a phrase that we have heard 1,000 times from the families that we've dealt with. When you have responsibility for a child with special needs or another close family member, this is what we have heard so many times. I'm afraid to die. I'm the caregiver. What's going to happen when I'm gone? You know, it goes to the core, and it's so logical to be worried about that. So the first thing we want to say in response to that is we are here to help. This is what the world of special needs has been near and dear to our hearts since the mid-'80s. We've been doing special needs trust and related planning since the '80s. It's at our core. So many of you know that, but Mark, could you go on to the next slide just so we're consistent here? So that's the message. You know, we have a book, by the way, Management and Creation Guide regarding Special Needs Trust. We write articles. Mark already mentioned a number of other relationships that we have. So we are here. So as we begin to present the content for this afternoon, we want to visit a couple of mysteries. Present a couple of situations that really are, in their own way, they're very poignant. They make some very important points. So mystery number one is about Larry and William. Larry's dad left him about $200,000. And when he got that money, it destroyed his eligibility for SSI, Supplemental Security Income. Most of you are familiar with that, an income program. And he lost his eligibility for Medi-Cal. About 3-4 years later, all the money is gone. And then he probably went back on eligibility for SSI. Now, William's father, very different plan. He left about $200,000 also. Government benefits were undisturbed. He didn't lose benefits. The money lasted for way over 10 years. The goal is lifetime, but $200,000 might not. But what's the mystery? What the heck is the difference here? What did they do differently?
Another mystery. Laura and Susan. Laura's grandparents set aside $60,000 for her benefit. When her parents passed away, $120,000 was there for Laura. So that $60,000 ended up providing $120,000 in benefits for Laura. Susan's grandparents set aside $60,000 for her benefit. When Susan's parents passed away, $1 million was there for Susan. What's the difference? What did Laura's grandparents do that was different from what Susan's grandparents did? How did $120,000 in one case become $1 million in another? We're going to explore these mysteries as we get through this presentation. And as we get started, I think some of you might know us, but if you don't, we're going to give you some background. Here are photos of us, although you see us right now. I'm going to expand us to the full screen so you can see us a little bit better. But let me introduce Michael Gilfix, my co-presenter here today. So I've known Michael for well over 35 years because he's my father, if that's not obvious. But some very important background. So Mike is from a small town in northern Michigan, but he came out to California to go to Stanford University, graduated from Stanford undergrad, graduated from the Stanford Law School in 1973, When he graduated, he wanted to change the world. He wanted to help people. But he looked for communities that were underserved and who needed help in the legal world. And he found two: older Americans and Americans with disabilities. And he went out and he, as a true social entrepreneur and legal trailblazer, set out to create new organizations and new entities to help these people. So in 1973, he started America's very first free legal aid program for the elderly, SALA, Senior Adults Legal Assistance. In 1976, he created the Disability Law Center, one of America's very first free legal aid programs for Americans with disabilities. He did a ton of other work, spreading the word, training other attorneys to start other organizations in other states. He helped shape the laws that protect Americans with disabilities and older Americans today. In the early 80s, he started Gilfix and Associates, the firm that we are now with today. He's remained a leader. He has trained thousands of other attorneys over the years. He's given countless presentations, articles, he's written books. He's been published in major publications, interviewed in the national media. He currently serves on the advisory board of the Academy of Special Needs Planners. In fact, Mike and I are going to be giving a presentation later this month for a national conference. It was going to be in Philadelphia, now it's all virtual, but we're going to be training other attorneys about multi-generational special needs planning. So he walks the walk, he talks the talk, and I just want to emphasize that through this all, he found a way to always coach all of my Little League teams and my sister's softball teams. Here's some visual proof. So Mike is in the top right of the screen. I am in the bottom left. So this also shows how long we've been in the Bay Area in Palo Alto. Mike was the coach. I was a player. So without further ado, let me introduce Michael Gilfix.
Thank you, Mark. You know, we've hardly changed. So to introduce Mark, Mark also went to Stanford undergraduate. His degree was in management science and engineering, combination of business, programming, learning how high tech worked, kind of a perfect background for Silicon Valley. Went to work for an international business consulting firm for many years based down in Southern California. And then at one point decided to become a lawyer and develop this practice and many, many other practices. He went to a great law school in Southern California. He was their class speaker, by the way, you know, right at the top of his class, graduating. And while Mark was in LA, he, for the fun of it and as a really kind of a professional, he became an actor as well. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Mark has won a number of awards. It's been awesome to watch, some writing awards, speaking awards. I think he mentioned he's also on the board of directors of the Pacific Autism Center for Education. I mean, what couldn't be a better role and responsibility for that. So we're just so pleased to have these ongoing involvements. One of Mark's principal achievements was winning the role in an internationally broadcast advertisement. Mark introduced Siri, your friend Siri, to the world. And here's Mark running along the Embarcadero, the first time Siri spoke to the world. This was on television screens all over the world. It was on the internet. It was on your computer. So Mark introduced Siri. His name wasn't appearing, but there he is in front of the Embarcadero. Kind of a very cool achievement.
So a little bit about us. I think that's important that you know who we are and where we come from, but special needs planning is core to what we do. I've given presentations with the Autism Society of America. Mike and I are working on an updated version of our book, Special Needs Trust Creation and Management Guide, which we'll have available soon. Every year we give a big presentation on this in person. Looks like this year we won't be able to do that, where we have a number of nonprofits. We have a huge event. Usually it's in May. Again, this year, almost certainly not going to happen in person. We're very glad that you're giving us some of your time. If you have questions, write them in the Q&A panel within the Zoom webinar thing. Write your questions. We're going to get to as many as we can at the end. We're not sure how much time we're going to have at the end, but please submit them in writing. We'll get to as many as we can. So again, about our firm, we've been in Palo Alto for over 35 years. We've served clients throughout the state for the last 35 years. As Mike said, I believe we were the second firm in the state of California to do special needs trusts. We've done as many as any other firm in the state of California. We're very proud of that. So what are we talking about here? What are the key issues we're going to explore? We're going to go over some core legal and regulatory issues. We're going to go through some public benefits that we think it's important that you understand and how they fit in with all of this. We're going to talk about some recent changes in law, the Secure Act, which has some implications for special needs planning and how you might direct your retirement account in the future. We're going to talk about some action steps that you need to take with your own plan and how that fits with the plan for your child, and some potential financial tools you might use to ensure a vibrant financial future for your child or your loved one with special needs. And really, this is all about creating that lifelong financial and legal safety net for that person in your family who needs it. But you can't take care of them if you don't take care of yourself first. So we're going to talk about how all of this fits together. So another line that we hear all the time: a diagnosis changes everything. I'm sure many of you in the audience can relate to this. It kind of, in some ways, it's kind of like what society is going through with this COVID virus, with the COVID-19. All of a sudden, life is, we're worried about day-to-day minutia. All of a sudden, something hits and your whole world orientation changes. The world shifts on its axis. And certainly, if you have a child or a loved one with special needs, you have to think about a whole new set of issues, and we know it can be overwhelming, and it doesn't cease to be overwhelming. And let's talk about some numbers. I think this won't be news to you, but in 2012, the estimates were that 1 in 68 children was on the autism spectrum. 2018, that number rose to 1 in 59. There are a number of different theories as to why that is, but the fact is there are more and more individuals being diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. Now, what does that mean from a planning standpoint? Well, it means that there are more and more people who are, in theory, entitled to get help from the government and who are entitled to government benefits and different programs. But the resources to pay for these programs are not increasing along with the number of people who are diagnosed. And let's take a step back and look what's happening right now. The government is going to probably end up spending $2 to $4 trillion on COVID-related bailouts, on keeping small businesses going, on supporting people who are losing their jobs. The deficit is absolutely exploding. Long term, this is going to put even more pressure on public benefits. So we're going to talk, public benefits are still crucial, but you also have to be aware of all the tools available that you can take care of on your own, and all the ways you can make sure there's help for your loved one if you can't rely on the government as much as we might hope to. Let's talk about a very important law that was passed a few years ago that we think you should all be aware of.
So most of you are familiar with, or at least you've heard about the ABLE Act. It's Achieving a Better Life Experience. It's been on the books, federal law, for about 3 or 4 years. In California, we only implemented it last year. We're a little slow getting around to it. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. It's no panacea. It's not the answer in all capital letters, but it's very helpful. So what it does is it allows you, as a parent perhaps, to create one of these accounts and put money into it. So to make it work, here are the basic criteria. The individual for whom the account is established must have been established as unable to maintain substantial gainful employment before the age of 26. Each year, up to $15,000 can go into an ABLE Act account. In California, by the way, we call it CalABLE. That's the website if you want to look it up. Cal, all one word, CalABLE, and it'll take you to the website with instructions, okay? So a total of, not $15,000 from each individual, but a total of $15,000 per year can go into the account. The money can come from the individual with the disability himself. It can come from a parent. Great deal of flexibility there. The account can hold up to $100,000, and it will not interfere with eligibility for SSI and Medi-Cal. It's a pretty large number. Tax benefits. This program is treated just like the Education 529 plan. If the assets in the small accounts earn any money, they're tax-free. When the money comes out to make distributions for the benefit of the individual, there's no tax implication, so they're tax neutral. Now, what can the money be used for? Okay, darn near anything. That's the best answer. There's a long list in the regulations in California identifying the diverse and comprehensive purposes to which this money can be placed. Generally speaking, all living expenses. Many folks, knowing about the ABLE Act, set up these accounts. Ohio is one of the first states to set up these accounts. If you did set up an account in another state, you can transfer it to California. There's not going to be a penalty if you do that. The individual who has the disability can be the manager of the account. A parent can, a grandparent can, a conservator can. But what's nice about this, what I think is very cool about this, is that if you have a child who may not be able to work, but likes to manage a little bit of money, is is capable of handling a little bit of money. It doesn't have to be $15,000. It could be $5,000, $10,000. Again, having that money in that account will not interfere with eligibility for government benefits. And here's control that your child can have over some money. Very good for dignity. Test their ability to manage money to see if they should ever get any more. Importantly, money remaining in an ABLE Act account at the time of the individual's passing, first thing that happens is that money is paid back to pay back the state of California for Medi-Cal benefits that were paid, okay? So that is one of the many reasons why usually you wouldn't put an enormous amount of money into these accounts, but they're available as a tremendous planning tool. The bottom line here on this slide is most important. This is by no means a substitute or a replacement for a special needs trust. There's a strict limit on the amount of money that can go into these accounts each year, and there's limitations on how they can be used. So, they're part of the puzzle. They're not the solution. Our role for you as we do individual planning is say, how does this fit in your family situation? Now let's do kind of a primer on public benefits. We've talked about a few programs. What do they mean, and how do you qualify, and what are the differences? Generally speaking, these programs break down into two categories. One is needs-based and the other is not, okay? Not needs-based would be Social Security for you and me. We've paid into the system. We've earned it. We've contributed, and therefore we have a right to get benefits. So SSDI is Social Security Disability Insurance. If an individual paid into the system and becomes disabled, they can have $50 million in a bank account and they still get the full benefits because, again, not needs-based. They earned it. If you get SSDI, the current law is in 2 years. 2 years later, you get Medicare. There's discussion in Congress, by the way, about eliminating that 2-year waiting period, which would be a tremendous development. We'll see where that goes. It's appropriate. It's logical. Okay. We're in a way more focused on the needs-based programs because, again, if you have too much money in your name, you don't qualify for SSI, an income program that we'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute, and you don't qualify for Medi-Cal, which is an imperfect but yet comprehensive health program that can take care of you here in California. There are eligibility criteria for IHSS, that's in-home support services. If somebody can't safely be at home because they need a high level of assistance, it's a program that can help pay for that. Same for Section 8 housing. If your child was lucky enough to get a voucher and lucky enough to find a landlord who would accept it, having money in a special needs trust is not going to disturb or eliminate eligibility for Section 8. And by the way, there's more discussion of putting more money into Section 8. It's such a need. We're hopeful that that's going to happen.
One thing that I want to point out is, given everything that's happening, I think it's very possible in the next year we're going to have some pretty big changes to government benefits programs. So many more people are going to need them. So, and I actually think there's going to be more resources available, but the surge of people who are going to need these programs is probably going to be pretty intense. So we're going to keep a close eye on that. Our team is going to keep a close eye on it. All something that we need to stay up to date on. One thing we want to talk about is the definition of disability. As we talk about, if an adult is disabled, he or she is eligible for some of these programs. The key, we get asked this all the time, what does that mean, disability? In the eyes of the law, this doesn't depend on a specific medical diagnosis. It simply relates to one's inability to maintain substantial gainful employment. If, because of some condition or some issue, an adult is just incapable, medically speaking, or for some reason, of supporting him or herself through full-time employment, they are disabled. And very importantly, it does not mean they are incompetent. It doesn't mean that they are incapacitated. It doesn't mean they can't manage their own affairs. It doesn't mean that they are less than someone else. It just means that there's some issue that prevents them from supporting themselves financially. So we want to take the stigma out of that term. It's not the best word, obviously, but it is what it is. That's the term that's used for a lot of these programs. And as Mike said, for many of these programs, you have to have a diagnosis of a disability, and for the needs-based programs, the number that's commonly used is you have to have under $2,000 in countable assets. Very importantly, this is a sneak preview, but assets in a properly set up and properly funded special needs trust do not count against that $2,000 limit. So Mike's going to talk a little bit more about some details about these programs.
So we're going to do this. We're getting a little bit behind, so we're going to move along pretty quickly here. So SSI again is the program that guarantees a minimum monthly income to individuals who can't work, and it's about a little over $940 a month. It's not a fortune, but it beats the heck out of nothing. So what can the money be used for, and what are the limitations? If a person is receiving SSI, there are some arguable limitations and some issues. First of all, you never give cash on a monthly basis to your child who's getting SSI. If they get 20 bucks a month from you, technically they have to report that, and their SSI check is reduced by $20 because the program guarantees a minimum monthly income. If you have other income, then your SSI check is going to be reduced because, again, it's going to get you up to that 943 level. Okay. We have a couple of words here, an asterisk. Can't pay for rent for that person or food for that person without having the SSI check reduced somewhat. It's a misnomer. It's a mistake to think that you can't use money in a special needs trust, and you as parents can't use your own money to help pay rent or to pay rent for a child who's on SSI. It's not the worst thing in the world. If you get SSI, by the way, you automatically qualify for Medi-Cal. There's no 2-year delay. It's automatic. So that's, in a way, it's a side benefit of getting SSI established for an individual. So let's go to the next slide quickly. This is what happens if you happen to, let's assume that you decide you want to pay all of the cost of rent for your child. Yeah, I mean, $934 to pay for food and shelter in the Bay Area. I mean, come on, you know, it's impossible. So at least you're going to have to help in most situations. So the worst that happens, so what happens if you pay it? The worst that happens is they don't lose their SSI check. It's reduced by about $783 a month. You only lose
reduced by $261.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the math. Yeah, sorry. It's the 1/3 of what the federal rate, the federal established rate is. That's the 783. So, you know, so if the SSI check goes down 260 bucks a month, frankly, so what? So sometimes, you know, we usually plan around that so you don't lose it, and you can. You can definitely provide housing for your child without losing the full SSI check for your child. But often you do. So again, it's a planning challenge. The reason we have ABLE Act exemption here is, interestingly, if a special needs trust pays rent, the SSI check is going to be reduced because of this. If the money paying the rent is coming out of the ABLE Act account, it's not reduced. You know, we don't look necessarily, by the way, for logic here. We look at what the law says. So there's opportunities here and there. Okay? Very important to understand these points.
In a recent change in law this passed at the end of last year, the Secure Act, it affects retirement accounts, inherited IRAs, inherited 401ks. So previously, if you left a retirement account to your child, whatever age your child was, say your child was 40 years old and you pass away, you say, I'm going to name my son, who's 40 years old, as a beneficiary of my retirement account. Your son would basically have the rest of his life to withdraw that money. The IRS would look at his age, say, okay, he has a life expectancy of 40 years, take out 1/40th per year. Now, why does that matter? Well, every distribution you make from a retirement account counts as income, and you have to pay income tax on it. So the longer you can stretch that out, the more you can delay income taxes. Generally, that's a good thing for the beneficiary. The Secure Act changed this for most people. Now, if you leave a retirement account to a child who doesn't have a disability or no issues, they have to withdraw the money in 10 years. So they have to take it out pretty quickly. They have to pay income tax on that. There's a big exception in the law. So if you have a child who is disabled, they don't have this 10-year limit. They can still stretch it out over their lifetime. And from everything that we've seen, special needs trusts also get this lifetime stretch. So without getting into too many details here, it means that it may make a lot of sense to leave more of your retirement account for the benefit of a child with a disability and less of it for a child who doesn't have a disability. And as you balance out your plan, and this is where integrated planning is so important, we can help you talk through all this, but it's critical to think about the tax implications of this. So the Secure Act, without, again, getting into too many details, makes it even more compelling to leave a larger share, potentially, of your retirement accounts to a special needs trust rather than to a child who doesn't have special needs.
You know, Mark, I want to add something here. That this is making one of the most important points we can possibly make today, which is that special needs planning, a special needs trust, you know, they're core, but there's no one size fits all. You know, everybody's different. You have a different profile of assets, a different diagnosis for your child, all kinds of factors, which means that when you put together a plan, you don't pull a trust off the shelf and plug it in. You know, what are your individual circumstances? How is the planning for the retirement money going to integrate with your other planning? And does the ABLE Act play a small role or a big role? Our other family members are not going to be involved. So again, it goes to the value of thinking it through, counseling, really being led through the appropriate questions. It's the core of what we're really talking about today.
Yeah, and we'll keep moving to keep on our schedule. One question we get, we're not going to spend so much time on this, can someone who's getting SSI work? Absolutely yes. There are limitations on this, but there's no reason why someone getting SSI can't work. You just have to be careful with the right type of job and the level of income you have. But of course, if you can work full time and make lots of money, you don't need SSI and you wouldn't be eligible anyway. So now let's transition to really one of the key issues we want to spend some time on, and that's special needs trusts. What are they? How do they work? Why are they so important? How do you set them up and how do you integrate them into your overall plan? And these are really the heart of special needs planning. They are the most important. If you have a child with special needs, I can say this pretty confidently, a special needs trust is likely the most important document you will ever create. It is something that will be there for your child for decades after you're gone. You gotta do it right. What is a special needs trust? It is an irrevocable trust that is designed to hold assets for the benefit of an individual with a disability without disturbing eligibility for public benefits. And it has to be irrevocable. We'll get into that a little bit later. Don't worry too much about that. But the key is it's there to hold assets for the benefit of someone with special needs without disturbing eligibility for needs-based government benefits, SSI, Medi-Cal, and other related programs. So in some ways, you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have this financial safety net, but you can still get government benefits. As meager as they might seem in the Bay Area, they're still very important and the money adds up over time. You want to talk about this issue, Mike?
Sure do. And by the way, wasn't it great that we brought Marie Antoinette into a discussion of special needs trust? Have your cake and eat it too? A literary allusion there. So this point is very important because we've heard this 100 times where, mom and dad, they have two kids, one is very able, one is not, one is disabled, and they say, why mess with the special needs trust? Why do any of that? I'll just leave everything to my daughter. I know she'll take care of her brother. We won't go through the list of reasons why that's a bad idea. It rarely works. Tax reasons, life intervenes, things change. So you need to be sure that that money is going to be locked up for the benefit of your child. You know that. So this is a solution that we always point out because it's put on the table so often, something not to do. Okay. And what, by the way, is the primary approach to a special needs trust? It's called a third party special needs trust. We'll talk about the first party a little bit later. Third party trust is what you set up for your kid. This is the typical 90% of the time it's a third party trust. Okay, so you set it up. Your trust says all or most of my estate goes into the special needs trust for my child. That's a third party. You're the third party. You're somebody other than the child is putting the money into that trust. Okay, you can't put money into it while you're living. Many people do that to feel secure about things, to put a home into the trust that they want their child to live in. Sometimes it's part of tax planning. Anybody can set it up. Grandparent can set it up, an aunt and uncle, a brother can set it up for a sister. So again, this is our core planning trust. And again, Mark mentioned our book. We can make it available if you'd like to get a copy of the Special Needs Trust Management and Creative Guide. We'll come back to that. We'll let you know how to contact us later.
You can give up to, in the current estate tax exemption, the amount that you can give to the next generation, be a gift or through bequest without a penny of estate tax exposure is really high. It's $11.58 million per person that can go to all of your children or all to a special needs trust without a penny of estate taxes. So it's a lot. And as Mike said, just to bring that point home, anybody can create it for anybody else. So a grandparent can create it for a grandchild. An aunt can create it for a niece. It doesn't have to only be parents for their children, as long as it's a different source. Let's go to these mysteries that we talked about. Mike, why don't you go through mystery number one?
Sure. So in mystery number one, remember we had Larry and William. Very simply, Larry didn't plan. He just went to his friendly neighborhood lawyer, or he got, offline, he got a will or a simple trust, and he left the money directly to his child. Okay. That means eligibility for the government benefits that existed was eliminated. Suddenly that child had more than $2,000. Frankly, if that happens, we can fix it through a number of creative ways, but if you don't get a good advice, you lose benefits. The $200,000 that was inherited is spent down to $2,000, and then it goes back on benefits. So that money did good for a short time, but the money was lost. What William's father did, obviously, is he created a special needs trust. And the money goes into the trust, a couple hundred, could be $1 million, could be 5 million. None of that money counts. No disturbance of eligibility for government benefits. All that money was there as that lifelong safety net so that William could be taken care of. Dramatically different outcome, you know, just an element of sophistication, not over the charts. Basic planning had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
So next we have a situation that comes up, by the way, pretty often. Sometimes there's been a divorce and mom and dad of the child both want to fund the special needs trust, but they might have different relationships. An aunt might want to put some money in. And here's the point. The special needs trust says what happens with money remaining in the trust when your child passes away. So you might say, well, it'll go to her sister, or it'll go to your favorite charity, like PACE. Well, somebody else putting money into the trust might say, well, you know, I really want to support the child, but any money that's left over from what I put in, I want it to go to my beneficiaries, different people. We can do that. I mean, that's not routinely in a special needs trust. It makes the point that we can craft a trust any way you like. We can have account B holding the money that Aunt Vera left into this trust. And then again, when the beneficiary passes away, what's left in account B is going to go where she wanted to go. So special drafting, it can be fine-tuned to fit circumstances. We want to accommodate other people funding the trust.
And as we look to the future, I think given the limited resources that are out there, and we've actually had some clients facing this, even if you create a special needs trust, the state has a right, if your child is receiving benefits and you say, yes, you have to reveal there's a special needs trust for them. And state eligibility workers have the right to review the special needs trust. And we expect in the future that scrutiny of special needs trusts will increase, and therefore improperly drafted special needs trusts or trusts that are confusing. Sometimes we'll see people who have their own living trust for mom and dad, and the trust embedded within it has a special needs trust. It says when I'm gone, then my trust creates a special needs trust, and it's all buried within my trust. That can cause confusion, and that can cause major issues when government benefits eligibility workers look at it. We've had some clients recently come to us. I've had 2 clients in the last 2 weeks who said they were having issues where the state was what looked like a valid special needs trust. State eligibility workers were saying, no, this isn't right. And it can be a big pain. So the key is really setting up as a separate document and making sure it's done right by a team that really knows what they're doing, because there's some specific language that the state often looks for. Anything you'd add there, Mike?
No, that makes sense. You know, okay, I will. So we actually recently have had 3 special needs trusts reviewed. It's the first party contact, but I'll make this point right now, that we have to have the trust reviewed by the Social Security Administration. We had the same language dealing with paying back the state, the reimbursement language. One comes back and they said, no, this is wrong. You have to fix it. This is unacceptable. So we had a big mess on our hands to fix it and change the language. 2 other cases, we sent in the language that was disapproved in 1, approved in 2. So not only are we getting a little more scrutiny, it's inconsistent. You know, you just never know. So hold on to your hats.
Might just depend on which eligibility worker looks at the trust.
And what their mood is that day. And what their mood is that day. So,
did they have a bad morning? Yeah. Rejected. They have a good morning. They had their cup of coffee. Hey, thumbs up. Yeah. But again, you need a team to help you through it. Let's also just talk about the costs. When I gave a talk for the Autism Society a couple months ago about how much is enough. I've given a version of this talk a few times to different groups, and thinking about, well, okay, what can I do for my child? How much am I going to need to have in this trust to make sure my child's supported long-term, that they're never going to be broke? There's always going to be resources for them. Without getting into too much detail, there was a study from the JAMA Pediatrics Journal. $1.4 to $2.4 million was the estimated level of financial support needed to support an adult on the autism spectrum really through their life. And obviously when there's someone on the autism spectrum in a family, there are higher divorce rates for the parents. There's a lot of stress, and it can impact mom and dad's health as well. It can impact your own financial plan. So that's a big number, $1.4 to $2.4 million, and it's scary. How can you guarantee this can be there? I mean, very few people have a couple $1 million just sitting around. There are some options out there that might not be as challenging as you might think. How can you be certain that there is that safety net? Make sure that your child isn't going to fall into the abyss. Life insurance.
Yeah.
This isn't right for everybody, but in many cases, we've seen some pretty extraordinary outcomes when families integrated life insurance into their estate and financial plan. So let's revisit mystery number 2. So again, mystery number 2 was Laura and Susan. Laura and Susan both have special needs. They're on the autism spectrum. Lauren's grandparents put $60,000 aside for her. When her parents passed away, there was about $120,000 for her. Susan's grandparents put $60,000 aside for her. When her parents passed away, there was $1 million there. So what was the difference? Well, Lauren's grandparents just put $60,000 in the bank for her. It grew at about 2% interest per year. Over 20, 30 years it was sitting there for her. It grew to $120,000. That's nice, but it's not enough. Susan's grandparents put that same $60,000 into a specific type of life insurance policy that guaranteed $1 million to go to Susan's special needs trust when Susan's parents passed away. Mike's going to break down one of the ways this can happen. So Mike, why don't you go through a specific example that our office actually helped a family with?
So this is a real life example. This happened. You know, this is not a hypothetical situation. So very long, actually very moving story, very short. Couple came to see us, see their ages. Husband was 48, wife 45. Ages are relevant to this discussion. Importantly, the wife's parents came along to that meeting, and they didn't have a lot of money. They were just freaked out about what the cost of care was going to be for their profoundly disabled child. Didn't know what to do, and we raised the possibility of life insurance. And they met with the insurance professional with whom we work and looked at their health, which was good. And they and the offer was to the type of policy that was recommended. So what's called a second to die policy. So the policy doesn't pay off until both mom and dad are deceased, which means the money's going to sit with the insurance company longer, which means it costs a little bit less to get insurance than if you just have one life. It's a bet the insurance company is making. So it came down to 2 different alternative approaches that they could achieve, that they could capture to have a $1 million death benefit. One option was every year there would be a premium of a little over $4,000. The other alternative was a single premium payment of about $60,000. Pay 60 grand now, and you have locked in that $1 million death benefit. And what happened in this really wonderful case is the grandparents, the parents of the wife, they decided to put most of the money up for that single premium payment. They did that. They captured the policy. And I'll just tell you, I wish we had time. It changed their lives. They went from worrying, not being able to sleep, never taking a trip, doing nothing. The relief was palpable. It was really a wonderful outcome. Life insurance. So it's not always the perfect answer, but it's always on the list of possibilities.
Yeah, so again, it's extraordinary. The single payment thing, I have a lot of clients who the idea that I can pay once and never have to think about another payment for this policy is pretty powerful. And it's a big check, but $60,000, a lot of people can find a way to come up with $60,000, especially if grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle are involved. Maybe that's how they give a gift rather than leaving it directly to your child. It can be towards this. So multi-generational planning, and this is where having, again, a team of integrated advisors, legal side, where we can help integrate all these issues together. And related to that, we're going to give you more information about this later, but we are here to help you. We want to be a resource to you. If you'd like to set up an appointment with us or a complimentary 15-minute call just to ask us some more questions, let us know. You can send the information through the chat and Zoom. You can reply to the email we sent you to confirm the link for this, but we're going to revisit this at the end. But we are here to answer more questions because I know we're not going to get to everything here today, but if you want to spend some time with us, we can set up a call with you. So let's talk briefly about retirement accounts. We already kind of addressed this. You absolutely can leave your retirement accounts, your 401k, your IRA, your Roth IRA. They can go to a special needs trust. And as we talked about before, if you leave a retirement account to a special needs trust, if you leave a retirement account to someone who doesn't have a disability, where there's no special needs trust, they have to withdraw that money over 10 years. They have to take a pretty big income tax hit because they have to take out 10% or so of what you left them every year that is added to whatever they're making from their job, potentially a lot of income taxes. For a special needs trust or for someone with a disability, this can be stretched over their entire lifetime. If you leave a retirement account to a special needs trust, that's an excellent way to fund it as well. So just think about that. When you create the special needs trust, you would update your beneficiary designation for that account, leave it to the trust. But anyway, another way, in addition to life insurance, to fund the trust from a source you might not have thought of before. I just want to talk very briefly about what we call the curse of the small inheritance. So a lot of times we encounter families where they don't do integrated planning, relatives don't talk, they haven't talked to their relatives. And let's say Uncle Jim wants to leave a special needs niece $50,000, and family doesn't set up a special needs trust, or they don't communicate with Uncle Jim. And down the road, let's say Mary is the child with special needs, and she's getting SSI, she's getting Medi-Cal, and lo and behold, her uncle passes away, $50,000 comes into her name. That normally would seem like a great thing. Money's money, that helps support her. The challenge though, is if this comes into Mary's name and doesn't go into a trust, she has to report this to SSI. She loses SSI benefits, she loses Medi-Cal benefits. She has to burn through the money until she's down to $2,000 again. It causes a big uproar, it causes hassles, or she has to report. It doesn't end up helping her. So the key thing is, when you set this up, whenever we work with families, we want to communicate with everybody else in the family, or at least give you the tools to send other family members notifications to say, hey, if you want to help out with our child, leave assets to the special needs trust, not to our child directly. So Mike, you want to talk about first party special needs trust?
Yeah, so far we focused primarily on the third party. And remember, that's where that's the typical special needs trust. Mom and dad set up the trust. They fund it out of their estate, either while they're living, but typically upon your passing. The first party trust is very different. This means that the money comes from the individual who is himself disabled. This often comes up when there's an accident and somebody is newly disabled, or somebody's getting government benefits, and as Mark said, they inherit money. One of the solutions, by the way, with the small inheritance is we create a first-party special needs trust. Mary, in the earlier example, she can create it herself. Her parents can create it. Her grandparents can create it. So anybody, well, actually not anybody, those folks I named, they can create this first-party trust. Mary or any individual who's getting benefits can put any amount of money into the first-party trust without disturbing eligibility for SSI and Medi-Cal. Generally speaking, if a big transfer is made, it will generate a problem with eligibility, but this is an exception. Now, to do it, the person must be under age 65, so you can't do it if you're 73. A radical difference between the first party special needs trust and the third party is the payback provision. With the first party trust, it must say that any money remaining in that trust upon the passing of the beneficiary, first thing that happens is the state has to be reimbursed. So notice goes to the state in essence sends a bill, and then it has to be paid back before the remaining money is distributed to other beneficiaries, family members, the charity of your choice, whomever or whatever. Remember, the third party trust, next slide, just reminds you with the third party trust that you set up for your child, no payback. Any money remaining is going to go where you want it to go. Dramatic difference. And rest assured, again, money you put into that trust, it's not going to go to the state upon your child's passing.
Yeah, and we've addressed this before, but a third-party special needs trust, it's not just parents setting it up for their kids. We've had many times grandparents will set it up for grandkids, and then they'll coordinate the planning across multiple generations. A sibling, we've had brothers set it up for their sister, godchildren, you don't have to be related by blood. Anybody can really set up a third-party special needs trust for anybody else. There's really no limitations there. It's a really powerful thing. Mike will talk a little bit about where this comes into LTC. We have long-term care. So we have to think about your long-term care and your medical expenses or your parents before we can think about assets that'll be left for the child.
So this profoundly makes the point that we have to think multi-generationally, that we don't just focus in on special needs, your child, that's it. It's got to be integrated with planning for you, and that doesn't just mean your revocable trust. Here is, let's call this an opportunity. Okay, so, and again, so often we have seen the situation. Somebody comes to us, now the client is not somebody with they're not coming for special needs planning, they're coming because they're freaked out about the cost of long-term care. There's a diagnosis of dementia. Somebody suffered a severe stroke, and they're looking at the possible placement in a skilled nursing facility. $10,000, $12,000 a month. That can break anybody. So the question is, are there any steps that can be taken to protect and preserve those assets while still achieving eligibility for this program to be sure that the cost of care is covered? Well, generally speaking, there are all kinds of rules and limitations when it comes to transferring and protecting assets and achieving Medi-Cal. As an aside, we can do that. We know those rules inside out. But One of the first questions we ask somebody facing this situation, very simple. We say, do you happen to have a child who's disabled? Is there a special needs trust? Because, whereas there are penalties, there's a period of ineligibility that flows from a big gift that somebody might make to a child, theoretically to achieve eligibility for Medi-Cal. But an exception, any amount of money, the entire estate can be transferred into a special needs trust, and it doesn't interfere with eligibility. Medi-Cal eligibility to pay for skilled nursing care is available the next day. That might have been a $1, $2, $3, $5 million transfer into the special needs trust. So it's a powerful option, usually not available, but here you are. I mean, by definition, you have this issue, you have the child, a family member, whatever age you are, like me, we're aging, right? So sooner or later, this cost of long-term care could come up as a real threat and a concern. So got to keep this issue in mind, this opportunity very much in mind.
Yeah, if you burn through your assets paying for long-term care, there's really nothing left for that special needs trust. We have to, again, think across multiple generations. We get this question a lot. What if my child can work? Especially with kids on the autism spectrum. If you were to look at some of the top programmers in Silicon Valley, I would bet many of them are on the autism spectrum. What if they can work? Why should I create a special needs trust? If my child later gets a great job, will that be a problem? The answer is no, it will not be a problem. When in doubt, you absolutely should create a special needs trust. There are many ways that it can still benefit your child. One, we can put provisions that say if my child's working and doing well, we can terminate the trust and distribute the money to them, or the trust can just continue. The trustee that you name can just kind of give money very freely to your child without worrying about government benefits eligibility issues. So the bottom line is, if your child can work in the future, special needs trust is not really a bad thing. But if they can't and you don't set it up, well, that's horrible. So when in doubt, create the special needs trust. There's a lot of ways we can adjust the plan later or accommodate the child in the future.
So before going through this, by the way, I'm going to repeat it again, that the trust is not a one-size-fits-all. Where you have some of the issues that we're alluding to time and again here, it takes special drafting. A special needs trust that was drafted 20 years ago probably won't have the language you need to allow it to interact safely with that Secure Act, with the distributions of IRA benefits, as an example. Countless examples like that. Okay, yeah. What can the money in the trust be used for? Darn near anything. I mean, there's your summary. It's designed to pay for the quality, first the necessities, but then quality of life for the beneficiary. You see some of the issues identified here. What I think one of the most important is medical care. If a child is eligible for Medi-Cal, first you look to the Medi-Cal provider or providers to get that care. But if there's any care that is needed from a provider who doesn't accept Medi-Cal, and let's face it, many doctors don't accept Medi-Cal, the money in the trust can be used to pay for that. So again, just because somebody's getting Medi-Cal doesn't mean the money can't be used to pay for medical bills. It most certainly can. So you can look over the list: a car, clothing, a residence, it can own a home, it can provide housing, on and on what the benefits can be. So comprehensively, it's that lifelong safety net to take care of your child. Don't worry about limitations or, will the money be available for your child? The general answer, the safe answer is yes, that money's going to be there to take care of your child.
And along those lines, there's actually a court case about this. Special Needs Trust can even buy Britney Spears concert tickets. There was literally a case about this where the state tried to say this trust isn't valid because they paid for tickets for Britney Spears concert. That should be disallowed. They should lose benefits. The court said, no, that's okay. It relates to the support of the beneficiary. So the money is very flexible. A lot of things we can use it for. Mike alluded to this, but this is a massive, massive issue, especially here in the Bay Area. Why don't you talk just a little bit about, expand on that subject, Mike?
Sure. Indeed, worry about housing. Where's my child going to be? If you're blessed with very significant assets, you can probably put together something, but for the vast majority, what's going to be safe housing for my child? Are they going to need to be in a group home? If so, what's it like? How in the world am I going to be able to go to my grave with confidence, knowing that my child is going to be taken care of? Goes back to that first thing we said in this webinar, I can't die. And this is the major reason typically. Where is my child going to be? So these are some of the options, and they're limitless because creativity and imagination can take us in any direction. Let's go back, Mark, please, to that one just for a moment. So the three options that we just identify here: Section 8, if your child is lucky enough to have a voucher, to get a placement. Section 8 can subsidize and pay for a lot of the cost of care. That often isn't viable because that's individuals living alone. Group homes, where there's 4, 5, 8, maybe 10 people living together. LSA Life Services Alternatives is an organization here in Santa Clara County that creates, and creates group homes. PACE is involved in helping people with the whole question of where the heck am I going to live? What's worth some emphasis are the private sector initiatives of which we are aware. And we're aware of 4 or 5, and there's others that we don't know about. And this basically is where parents get together and they say, you know, we have common issues with our kids. What can we do? Can we create our own environment? And many are doing that. Buying land, building a facility for 8, 10, in one facility with which we're familiar, there's going to be over 20 individuals on the autism spectrum living together in the future.
Yeah.
Property is purchased, being constructed. In that particular facility, they're going private. They're not going to get licensed. The parents are just doing it. There's another we're aware of where they are going to get licensed. So the point is being creative, focusing on this is one of the main things we try to help you with.
Yeah, and a special needs trust absolutely, I'm going to pay attention to time here, but special needs trust absolutely can buy housing for your child. But keep in mind that you can leave a house to a special needs trust. Just keep in mind, if you do that, you got to keep it, make sure there's enough assets there to pay for maintenance, property taxes, and just keeping the home safe for your child. So a lot of issues going in. It's not as simple as necessarily leaving a house, but a special needs trust absolutely can own a home or an apartment, or can buy a condo for your child. I want to talk about letters of guidance for just a moment. A special needs trust provides a financial and legal safety net. But let's say you're gone and someone who you don't even know now, or someone who doesn't know your child very well, is in charge of this trust for your child. How can you make sure that they use the money the right way, and that they know as much as they can about your child? Well, one thing that we strongly recommend is a letter of guidance. And so this is a non-legal document. You have it with your special needs trust, where you just write, it can be 1 page, it can be 10 pages, that just tells the person who's in charge of this trust in the future what you'd want them to know about your child, what he or she likes, the types of care they need, the doctors you want them to see specifically. We've had examples of this where a parent said, it's critical that my son always gets the latest and greatest skateboard pack. He loves skateboarding. Or video game system, whatever the new Xbox system, it's really important that he gets that. So it can be anything, but this is a non-legal tool that we strongly recommend that you create when you're creating your plan. Along those lines, this is for the trustee. Now, how do you choose a trustee? Mike, do you want to spend just a couple minutes on that?
Sure. You know, this is often the most challenging decision. You're gone, money's in the trust. Who's going to be the trustee? Who's going to manage the money, invest the money, use the money for your child's quality of life? Are you investing in and trusting that person? I mean, it's at a level that is just staggering. So we know how important this is. Okay, so here's how we kind of think it through. Do you have a close family member who ideally who knows your kid, who's very responsible, who could do it? It could be another child. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. The sibling, that can work. Is there a trusted, close friend, somebody who's known you and especially your child a long time? Kind of hard to find that person. If you don't find somebody there, often you have to go to the world of professionals, and they fall into 2 categories. One are individuals. There are individuals who are professional fiduciaries. What they do, their whole profession, is to serve as a trustee or as a conservator. Many attorneys serve in this role as well. So that's the idea of an individual professional, expertise, knows the rules, they take over and serve as trustee. If you don't have somebody there, you can go to financial institutions. There are many banks that are willing, some eager, to serve as trustees of special needs trust. You can have more than one. You can have a family member and a professional together. There are things called pooled trusts, where it's a nonprofit organization that takes usually, well, sometimes smaller special needs trusts. They pool all the money, they have a staff, and they serve as trustees. So we walk you through this. This discussion can take 45 minutes. This is a tough one. We know what the options are, and you have to settle on somebody you trust.
Mm-hmm. And that's critical and one of the most challenging steps for most families. Now, we've already talked about this. Where do assets go for a third-party trust when your child passes away? Well, if it's a first-party trust, goes back to the state. You can go to family members. You might name a nonprofit like PACE as a beneficiary for the nonprofits that really provide great services to your child. So, and it absolutely can go to other family members or other siblings. So critical to think about that as well. Now let's take a step back, and we're going to go just a little bit over the 1 hour that we said. We want to make sure we get through all this, not too much over. How do you integrate this into your own plan? And we're going to bring up a concept called the Family Protection Trust, to be for other children who don't have disabilities. And how does this all fit together? Because your plan is absolutely critical. Your whole estate plan is only as strong as the weakest link. If there's any missing piece, everything can fall apart. Some critical other documents you have to have. So you have to have an updated revocable living trust. This is what you need to make sure. If you did it a long time ago, you need to revisit it. If you don't have one, you need to create one. You also need an up-to-date durable power of attorney document that goes to help you to manage your day-to-day financial affairs if you become incapacitated. And in the era of the coronavirus, we just don't know if we're going to have capacity throughout the future. If something happens to us, how are our assets going to be managed? And therefore, how can we support our child in the future? Critical, you don't just do a check the box downloadable form or a very simple power of attorney. You need one with more advanced provisions around supporting. If your child's over 18 and you're out of it, if your power of attorney doesn't explicitly say, my money can be used to support my son with special needs, well, that can be really problematic if it doesn't address that. You also need an advanced healthcare directive. If you're in the hospital, who can make decisions for you, who can communicate on your behalf. So we don't want you to be left hanging if you become incapacitated, because then all your assets can disappear. Let's do a brief visual. Let's say someone has 3 kids. How would their basic estate plan look? Well, they would have their own living trust. Mom and dad would set up their own revocable living trust. 3 kids, 1 child on the autism spectrum. We create an SNT, a special needs trust. For the other 2 kids, and this, we give long talks about just this, we're going to throw this out there, that other children can have very protective trusts too. Our version of this is a family protection trust, FPT. You can leave money to your other children. If you have 3 here, you have 2 FPTs and 1 special needs trust. Why would you leave money to a family protection trust for your other children? Well, there's some major protections for them, from divorce, from lawsuits, from future estate tax. It's a way to protect your assets for multiple generations. Again, not the focus here, but we want to throw it out there. There are other tools available for any family member. So you need to have your plan up to date. You need to have your revocable living trust. Make sure it's up to date. Your own backup trustees, your own decision-making agent have to be up to date. They have to be the right people, especially given what we're going through. We just don't know if one of us is going to get one of the bad cases of coronavirus. Make sure you are covered. Along those lines, if your child is over 18, what do they need to set up? And Mike, do you want to just briefly talk about this?
Sure do. We think this is an opportunity overlooked far too often. Often folks come to us, the bottom line here, I have to set up a conservatorship. My child is going to be 18. They think it's a requirement, that there's no alternative. Sometimes a conservatorship is needed. We handle conservatorships, but more often than not, we don't. What we do is we talk with them about their child's ability. Is there enough understanding there, and often there is, to sign these basic documents. So we have, on countless occasions, when a child turns 18, talked with them, communicated with them about signing their own durable power of attorney and advanced directive at minimum. Those 2 documents alone, if we can get them signed, can eliminate the need for a conservatorship. So think about that. No involvement from the court system. We're lawyers. We don't like the court system. There's very few blessings that flow from that. There's a lot of costs, a lot of hassles. It's alienating. So again, if we can find sufficient levels of capacity, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. This is on the front burner for us. It's protective. It saves a ton of money, and your child is going to name logically the parents, and then maybe a sibling as the alternate. And those documents, incredibly powerful. So respectful of your child as well.
Yeah. So we've thrown a ton at you here. Let's take a deep breath, and we'll get to some summary points here. I think one thing, we've thrown out all these concepts. The key is, I think I'll give AT&T credit here, but just okay is not okay. When you look at your planning, your own estate planning and the special needs trust you create for your child and the way it's all integrated, doing just an okay job is not okay. These are the highest stakes possible. And there is so much value that can be discovered if we do things the right way. So much value can be preserved if we do things the right way. So no matter who you work with, no matter how you set this up, you have to work with a team that really lives and breathes this stuff and knows how to bring it all together. Because this is really a chance to take control and provide for a vibrant future for yourselves and your children. And it's all connected. If you don't provide for yourself, there's not going to be enough there for the next generation. So what do you need to do now? What are some immediate steps? Well, If you don't have a special needs trust, you absolutely need to create one for your child. And if you have one and it's been a little while, it's time to revisit it. We can always help you review it to make sure that it's structured the right way, the right people are named. You need to make sure that your own estate plan is up to date, that your revocable living trust, your durable power of attorney, your advance directives are all in place and that they are up to date. If it's been a long time, that's not good enough. You got to take a fresh look at it because, you know, the coronavirus, COVID-19 teaches us you delay on this stuff, it can be very dangerous. We just don't know what life will throw at us. We want to make sure that we're well prepared and well covered. So, you know, of course, we would be privileged to help your family with your own planning. Regardless, we are here to chat with you. We're going to spend a little bit of time answering questions. We're over, but Mike, if we're okay with that, we'll go a little bit past this. We have a lot of questions. We'll go through a few of them. But if you'd like to set a time to talk to us, or if you'd like to just set a planning meeting, we're doing Zoom meetings with a lot of people now. Contact us, gilfix.com. You just respond to the email that we sent out to you with the information for this webinar from Ashley Deck at our office. Just respond to her, say you're interested in working with us. And we are offering 15-minute free calls if you just have basic questions or just want to ask us a few offline. We're happy to do that at absolutely no charge. We're happy to have these phone calls with you. And we're here for you. So we want to help you create that long-time financial safety net. Here's some information. You can email ashley.deck@gilfix.com. She sent you that email with the confirmation for this webinar. And before we get to questions, for those of you who can't stick around, we want to thank PACE, the Pacific Autism Center for Education. Again, I'm a proud member of the board of directors. Go Team PACE. We want to thank PACE for their help. We want to thank you for spending some time with us. If you want to reach out to us, you can call us to set up either an appointment or a complimentary call. You can email us as well. Now we're going to take some time to answer some of the questions. So Mike, let me take a look. We have a number of them. Let me just take a look. So one question is that question of when do I need a CalAble account versus a special needs trust? You want to just talk briefly about that, Mike?
Well, sure. I mean, you need to set up a special needs trust, period. You should disassociate that from the ABLE Act account. That is so fundamental, so necessary. The ABLE Act is not, the ABLE account is not a necessity. It's a good thing to do. Remember, only $15,000 a year can go into it. So no harm in setting it up now, putting some money into it. You decide if you're going to be the manager of the account, is your child going to be the manager of the account? But that special needs trust, that's what has to be set up. You know, God forbid something happens to you tomorrow, the virus, an accident, whatever. You know, we are incredibly optimistic in this office, by the way, but as we always say, we deal in reality. And reality is that anything can happen. So, you know, they're in tandem, but one is dramatically more important than the other.
Another good question, how do you designate a 401k or a life insurance policy? Do you leave it to the individual with a disability or do you leave it to the special needs trust? You leave it to the special needs trust. And you have to create that trust right away. You can't have it created in the future. You can't wait because you can't leave assets to a trust that doesn't exist. You want to create that trust, you would leave the special needs trust as the beneficiary.
And it's probable, by the way, with this new Secure Act, that we have to be sure that the special needs trust has the appropriate language. There's some terminology that can interfere with its ability to get that lifetime stretch out. So again, the trust has to be, you can name a special needs trust, but it has to be properly drafted.
Yeah, and it's a question about 529 plans and transferring it into an ABLE account and kind of along the lines of what's the difference? We kind of talked about the difference between a special needs trust and an ABLE Act account. Special needs trusts don't have a $100,000 cap. They don't, if it's a third-party trust, it doesn't go back to the state after your child passes away. But 529 plans, you can't put a child's 529 plan into a third-party special needs trust. But there are ways you can put it into an ABLE Act account. So again, as we talked about, an ABLE Act account is a nice thing to have alongside a special needs trust, but due to its limitations, it should not take the place of that. So we can always help you to coordinate that. We had questions about insurance. If the parents are in their early 70s and have some life issues, could they still purchase life insurance, or can their other non-disabled child purchase life insurance for the disabled child? Put it on a sibling's life or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, if we are over 70, frankly, at this point in time, there are some life insurance companies, we just got a report about this, that these days, maybe temporarily, if we're over 70, they won't even talk to us about life insurance. Most companies will, but some won't. So that's remarkable. But let's face it, if we get life insurance at age 70, it's going to be much more costly than if we're younger. So could a younger person, another family member, get the policy? Could you give money to your niece to buy a policy? Yes. And you can give, if you're a married couple, you can give $15,000 a year. That's 30,000 between the two of you to your niece. It's an invisible gift. It's called the annual exclusion. So you could give that money to her. What I would do to be on the safe side is we would actually create a life insurance trust, and you would put that money into the trust, and your niece would be the trustee. She would use the money you put into that trust to pay the premium. So there's another way of achieving that.
Yeah, and we're just going to do one more question before we wrap things up. And it's actually a good comment by someone who's attending, just saying, hey, look, it looks like many federal and state programs were already underfunded, and they're going to be cut more as a result of this coronavirus crisis. I mean, so much money is going to support small businesses that never needed support before. So many people are unemployed. Money is going to have to go to these people. The federal government was already talking about cutting funding for a lot of these very important programs. What do we do? How do we develop a long-term safety net for our children in light of these likely cuts in the future? Well, the answer is a special needs trust. And as we've talked about, it is absolutely critical that you don't just create a special needs trust, you just have a simple plan. Again, your overall plan is only as strong as the weakest link. You have to make sure everything's integrated. Revocable living trust, make sure it's up to date, the right people named to help you. Your durable power of attorney documents, they can't just be check the box forms. Your advanced healthcare directives, we have to make sure you, mom and dad, are taken care of, and that your plan, your state, legal, and your financial plan is integrated properly with your special needs trust and your special needs plan for your child.
And let me add to that the one other thing I would suggest that you do is think about advocacy, because it's going to be a fight. The pie money is shrinking. So people have to be advocates. You have to be out there talking to legislators about what's going to happen with these government programs. So, as an individual family, you do everything Mark just said. But as we look at ourselves as a bigger community, as a society, we need to all be out there fighting to be sure that our fair share, which has got to be substantial, is protected for the special needs community.
Yeah, so on that note, we just put the information we have to contact us just back up. Hold on just one moment. So if you want to chat with us in the future, you can call our office. You can email Ashley, just reply to the registration email if you want to set a call with us. If you want to set a planning meeting, if you're ready to just move forward, let us know. We can set that up. We'll tell you how that works. If you want to set a time just for a complimentary 15-minute chat with us, we're happy to do that for Friends of PACE. Again, we thank you very much for spending some time with us. This will be available as a recording. We're going to share it with you. Feel free to share it with your friends. We want to spread the word. While we would love to get the chance to work with you, more important to us is that the word is spread about what these tools are and how every family can put these into place. We know what we're doing. There are other people who know what they're doing too, but the key thing is take action. We're here as a resource. PACE is a great organization. Continue to work with them. But on that note, we thank you so much. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and make sure you take some steps. While this is all top of mind, take some action right away. We'd be privileged to help you. But again, we thank you so much for taking part of this, and we're about to wrap this up. But again, from Michael Gilfix and myself, Mark Gilfix, and our team at Gilfix and the Poll Associates, and I think from the Pacific Autism Center for Education, thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.